Okay, so if you recall, we were going through people and organizations, which is obviously section 2. And we went through all 7 theories also, motivation. Then we covered recruitment. We did training. And we also learned about the barriers to communication. We went through communication also, finished the entire topic. And now what we are left with in this particular section, one is organizational structure. And then I will also like to throw some light on the format of an HRM based question, how to attempt a question on human resource management. I might have mentioned this before, but properly, I would just like to convey the salient features or the main points to you that that must be given more importance whenever you are attempting a question on human resource management, or also called personnel management, right? But first of all, the topic under discussion is organizational structure. We finished that first, organizational structure, then a bit of HRM, and then we will start attempting questions from section 3. I shared some data with your class. It was regarding elasticity of demand or promotional spending elasticity demand. That is from section 3, demand. So a bit of elasticity of demand and various types, that is also included in today's discussion. Okay, so first of all, organization. Let's discuss organizational structure. We can start going through this. Now, you might have an idea that the term organizational structure, it refers to, if you want to define it properly, the formal channels of communication, within an organization that show how the management is linked together, right? Organizational structure, it is defined as the formal channels of communication that show how the management is linked together, the formal channels of communication. And when we use the phrase formal channels of communication, what we are referring to is the working relationship that exists between various levels of hierarchy. In a business organization, how do people interact? Who is answerable to whom? Which assistant manager is answerable to which manager? What kind of interaction do they have horizontally between different managers, so on and so forth. So when you have to define organizational structure, you will use the term channels of communication, formal channels of communication. So I repeat, people who are joining in, we are discussing organizational structure here. Organizational structure. That's the next topic in section 2. And I'm just going through, I've just defined the term organizational structure. Organizational structure refers to the formal channels of communication within an organization that show how the management is linked together. That is the proper definition of the term organizational structure. That's our first topic for today. The formal channels of communication that exist within an organization that show how the management is linked together, right? So, you know, the diagram that I forwarded, that must have been shared with you by now, that shows a typical organizational chart, right? Most of you, it was shared on that on our WhatsApp group. That diagram represents an organizational chart. And if you refer to the diagram, the organizational chart, you can have an idea about the kind of working relationship all the people in this organization have, right? That though in an actual examination, in an actual paper, you're not supposed to draw that organizational chart. You're not required to do that. But this organizational chart, if you refer to it, it will make it easier for you to understand the concept of this organizational structure. That's our main topic today, the first topic. Okay, So if you look at the diagram, the organizational chart, you will observe that this is a typical organizational chart. It will certainly vary from organization to organization. It will fluctuate. It will vary from organization to organization. It depends on the style of leadership, the type of business, so on and so forth. But this organizational chart gives you a general idea. So, maybe right at the top, there could be a chief executive officer, a CEO. Sometimes, the term or the title chairman is used. Then maybe that would be the first level of hierarchy. Then we have the directors, possibly 3, 4, 5 directors, depending on the business. That is the second level of hierarchy. This is what an organizational chart is. These directors, they're answerable to the chief executive. Then under each director, there could be one or more managers. That is the next level of hierarchy. The managers, they report to the directors. Then to the managers, one or more assistant managers report. That is the next level of hierarchy. Then maybe there are management associates. They are answerable to the assistant managers, right? Then there might be supervisors who report to the management associates, so on and so forth. So how people interact within an organization, who's answerable to whom, the kind of working relationship that they have, this is formally known as the organizational structure or the organizational chart, right? Okay, so that is why we define the term organizational structure as the formal channels of communication that show how the management is linked together, right? Okay, then again, at the cost of repeating myself, the organizational structure doesn't have to be like the one that is shown in the diagram. This is just to give you an idea. It will vary from organization to organization, right? Okay, so generally speaking, an organizational structure always identifies the span of control and the levels of hierarchy. In an organizational chart, in an organizational structure, the span of control and the levels of hierarchy are defined clearly. First, you will define the organizational chart, then you will, these two terms are so important that even if you're just defining the term, in the second or third sentence, you should mention these terms. That an organizational structure clearly identifies the levels of hierarchy and the span of control. The span of control and the levels of hierarchy, they are clearly shown in an organizational structure, right? Now, obviously, you should know how to define the term span of control and levels of hierarchy. Needless to say, span of control is the number of subordinates who are directly answerable to one manager. That is the span of control. Span of control is defined as the number of subordinates who are directly answerable to one manager. The number of subordinates who are directly answerable to one subordinate, to one superior, or to one manager, we call it the span of control, right? How many people are answerable to one manager? That is the span of control. The span of control could be wide or narrow. We can have a wide span of control. We can have a narrow span of control. The span of control could be classified as a broad or a narrow span of control. What's the difference between a wide span of control and a narrower one? The difference is that in a wide span of control, a large number of subordinates are answerable to the same manager. When a large number of subordinates are answerable to the same manager, we call it a wide span of control. If I'm the manager and there are 10 individuals, they directly report to me, right? Employee A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they're all answerable to me directly, then I would say, I've established a wide span of control in the organization. Everyone interacts with me directly. That's a wide span of control. But when very few individuals are answerable to one manager, when few individuals are answerable to one manager, they report to one manager, we call it a narrow span of control, right? So when very few individuals are answerable to one manager, that is a narrow span of control. When a large number of subordinates are answerable to one manager, we call it a wide span of control. Wide and narrow, right? Wide and narrow span of control. So wide span of control, a large number of individuals answerable to the same manager. Narrow, very few individuals. Okay. Since we are discussing this, the span of control. We are discussing organizational structure, everyone. So since we're discussing the difference between wide and narrow span of control, there's a very commonly asked question in the past papers, if you might have seen that before, that why is a wide span of control better than a narrower one? If you come across a question, why is a wide span of control better than a narrower one? Usually this question carries 3 marks. You should be able to come up with 2 specific points that favor the wide span of control. Why is a wide span of control better than a narrower one? There are 2 points that you should mention for providing the examiner with the evidence that you have an idea about the concept. Okay, what are those 2 factors? Maybe you can say these are the 2 advantages of having a wide span of control as compared to a narrower one. The first one is that in a wide span of control, communication is of a higher quality. In a wide span of control, the quality of communication is better. If you remember, people who attended the last class, we discussed communication. One of the barriers to communication was the chain of command is long. Remember, maybe it was the first point, that one of the barriers to communication is a long chain of command. A lot of people are involved in the communication process. So basically, a long chain of command is same as a narrow span of control, right? A long chain of command and a narrow span of control, they mean the same. So a wide span of control is same as a short chain of command. Wide span of control is a short chain of command. So this is where the advantage is. Then a wide span of control, there's a short chain of command. Everyone can interact directly. The subordinates, they have an access to the managers. The subordinates, they can communicate with the managers directly. So this means the quality of communication will improve in case of a wider span of control. So the first advantage, the foremost, that goes in favor of having a wide span of control as compared to a narrower one is that in a wide span of control, the quality of communication is better. Why? Because there's a direct interaction between different levels of hierarchy. Wide span of control, like I just explained in the beginning, wide span is the one in which all of them report directly to the manager, which means all of them can interact with the manager directly. They don't have to go through someone. So that is why in a wide span of control, the quality of communication is comparatively better as compared to a narrower one. That's a wide span of control. That is point number 1 that goes in favor of having a wider span of control as compared to a narrower one. Secondly, we might also mention that in a wide span of control, there is a greater delegation of powers. In a wide span of control, the managers are in a position to delegate powers. The managers, they are in a position to delegate powers to their subordinates, right? They can delegate powers to their subordinates. And as a result of this, you know, the subordinates, they're motivated also because they feel that the managers, they have confidence in our abilities. You can delegate powers to them. And, you know, in a way, the point that I discussed previously, the first point and this one, they overlap also in you know, to a great extent. When you have a direct access to the managers, you will be motivated. An employee who feels that he can talk to the manager whenever he wants to, there are no barriers between the managers and the subordinates, that basically goes on to show that, you know, the level of motivation can be raised. So that could be another advantage. Then a wide span of control, the level of motivation is higher as compared to a narrow one. So whenever you are attempting a question which is based on a comparative analysis between a wide and a narrow span of control, these 2 points have to be highlighted, or these 3 points if required. 1, in a wide span of control, the quality of communication is better because there are no barriers. Number 2, the managers, they can motivate the workers by delegating powers to them. And the workers are motivated also because of the fact, because they feel that our managers are accessible and you know, there are no barriers. So just remember, this is a very commonly asked short question. Why is a wide span of control better than a narrow one? Okay, we'll continue with the discussion. So in an organizational structure, you will mention the term span of control. He will also mention the term levels of hierarchy. Basically, for your understanding, levels of hierarchy are, this term and chain of command, they are almost similar. Levels of hierarchy and chain of command, they more or less they mean the same. What are levels of hierarchy? The exact definition is, levels of hierarchy are the layers of management. Levels of hierarchy, these are the layers of management. Levels of hierarchy are the layers of management through which authority is transmitted downwards. I repeat, levels of hierarchy are the layers of management through which authority is transmitted downwards. Layers of management: chief executive, directors, managers, assistant managers, management associate, supervisors, clerical staff. These are layers of management. And these are the levels of hierarchy. So levels of hierarchy are the layers of management through which authority is transmitted downwards. Obviously, the director exercises authority downwards over the managers over the assistant managers, management associate, supervisors, clerical staff, so on and so forth. Right? So the levels of hierarchy are the layers of management. And this is almost similar to chain of command. So in a typical organizational structure, both span of control and the levels of hierarchy can be identified easily. Right? In a chain of command or levels of hierarchy, they almost be the same, like I just explained. So in an organizational structure, both the chain of command, that is the levels of hierarchy, and the span of control, they are defined very, very clearly. Right? Okay. Now, the types of organizational structure. Now we have to learn about the types of organizational structure. Organizational structures, try to remember, they're classified into a hierarchical structure and a matrix structure. An organizational structure is classified into a hierarchical structure and a matrix structure. So there are two types. There is a hierarchical structure, and then there's a matrix structure, M-A-T-R-I-X. The one that you have, the diagram, that's a hierarchical structure. The one that you can see in that diagram of the organizational chart, this is basically more or less, this is a hierarchical structure. And remember, a hierarchical structure is found more commonly than the second one. A hierarchical structure is found more commonly than a matrix structure. And what is a hierarchical structure, by the way? As the name suggests, a hierarchical structure is the one in which the levels of hierarchy are defined clearly. A hierarchical structure is the one in which the levels of hierarchy are defined clearly. And there is no ambiguity, there's no doubt, there's no confusion regarding responsibility or authority. Do you understand this point? A hierarchical structure is the one in which the layers of management or the levels of hierarchy, they're defined clearly, right? And there's no confusion or ambiguity regarding the responsibility or authority. Everyone knows exactly what his responsibility is, and everyone knows exactly the degree of authority that is allowed to exercise. Right, everyone? So in a hierarchical structure, everything is defined clearly, or in very simple terms, everyone knows exactly what he's supposed to do. There's no confusion, right? There's no ambiguity, like I said. Everything, responsibility, authority, or duty, etc., everything is defined clearly. Everything is streamlined. As you can see in that organizational chart also, the designation, the appointments, they can be seen very, very clearly. That, these two assistant managers are answerable to this manager. This manager reports to this director. So there's no confusion. So that is why we say that a hierarchical structure is a more effective arrangement. It's a better arrangement for carrying out routine work. If you want to carry out routine work, day-to-day activities, a hierarchical structure is a more suitable arrangement than a matrix one. A hierarchical structure is recommended more strongly for carrying out routine work, day-to-day activities, because everything is streamlined, everything is well planned. There's no confusion, no ambiguity regarding what a person is supposed to do. Like I said, use the words authority and responsibility. No confusion regarding authority, no confusion regarding responsibility. So, for routine work, this is perfect. And you may add one more point here, vertical interaction. In a hierarchical structure, the interaction is primarily vertical, upwards, downwards, between different members of the organization. The interaction is primarily vertical. It is upwards, downwards, vertical interaction. Obviously, the manager, he interacts with the director, who is senior to him. So that's vertical. Similarly, a manager exercises authority over the assistant manager, who's junior to him. That is the next level of hierarchy, the lower one. So the interaction is vertical, upwards or downwards in a hierarchy. Now let's try and compare this to a matrix structure. That's the other one, a matrix structure. Now you have to keep in mind, a matrix structure is the one, matrix structure, which is slightly rare, slightly uncommon as compared to this one, as compared to the hierarchical structure, slightly uncommon. A matrix structure is the one in which project teams are formed. What is a matrix structure? This is the one in which project teams are formed, including representatives of different departments, right? A matrix structure is the one in which project teams are formed, including representatives of different departments. Representatives of different departments. So they create project teams in which people from different departments are included. Let's suppose there's a project team. They have somebody from the marketing manager. He joins hands with the finance manager, who joins hands with the R&D manager, who joins hands with the production manager. So all these managers, they work together as a team, as a project team. So it includes representatives of various departments who work together as one project team. That is called a matrix structure. Representatives of different departments, they join hands, they combine their resources, and they work together as a project team. That's called a matrix structure, right? So as you must have observed, that the interaction between different individuals in a matrix structure, it is primarily horizontal. In case of the hierarchical structure, the interaction primarily it was vertical. But in a matrix structure, the interaction primarily is horizontal. Manager finance, he interacts with manager production, manager HR, they're all at the same seniority level. So they are interacting horizontally with each other. It's not that one manager is answerable to the other manager. They are at the same level of hierarchy. So interaction is horizontal. These people are from different departments, they work together. And the significance of a hierarchy, of a matrix structure is that it is recommended in case of projects which are unusual. It is recommended in case of projects which are extraordinary, projects which are technologically advanced, right? So projects which are technologically advanced, projects which are a bit more challenging, projects which are extraordinary, which are exceptional, which do not involve the routine work or the routine activities. For such extraordinary projects, which are technologically advanced, which are slightly more challenging, a matrix structure is preferred for obvious reasons. Because in a matrix structure, you have people from different departments with different expertise. All these people in that project team, their expertise is different, their specialization is different, they represent different departments. So the project is so complicated and complex that it cannot be managed single-handedly by one department, right? So this is a challenging project, and it cannot be managed single-handedly by one department. So the expertise or specialization of different departments is needed, right? So if that's the situation, and expertise of different departments is needed, or different managers is needed, they all have to share their ideas and they have to work together. For that, a matrix structure is a better option. That's a better option, right? So you should know how to compare these two. A hierarchical structure, everything is well defined, responsibility, authority, everything is clear, there's no ambiguity, and that is the significance of having a hierarchical structure, because everything is streamlined. So that is why it is better for managing routine work. Matrix structure, like I just explained, is recommended only if it's a challenging project, right? But I think you can well imagine a matrix structure can lead to certain problems also. For instance, it can, and it does actually, lead to conflicts. It can lead to conflicts. It can lead to disagreement. It can lead to clashes between the team members, between the people who are working as a part of the same project team. You know, they are all at the same level of hierarchy. So authority and responsibility that we discussed in the previous one, that's not defined clearly. Who is answerable to whom? Obviously, there's an ambiguity there. So authority and responsibility, they're not defined clearly. They're all at the same seniority level. They're all specialists in their respective fields. They have an expertise. So there are chances that in a matrix structure, there might be conflicts, disagreement, clashes between different individuals who represent various departments. That is a possibility. That is a possible problem, and it is experienced also. It is observed also in case of a matrix structure, right? So that, but otherwise, matrix structure is also significant. I hope you've understood the difference between a hierarchical structure and a matrix structure, right? Then there's another thing also. You know, nowadays, these organizational structures, they are designed in 3 different ways, just for your information. In fact, this can be mentioned in the answer also. You can say there are 3 different types of trends these days regarding the structure, you know, which is being followed by the management. There are 3 trends here, the 3 possible ways in which the organizational structures are designed. They can be designed either by function, by product, or by region. Try to remember these. An organizational structure can be designed by function, by product, or by region. There are 3 possible ways of designing an organizational structure: by function, by product, by region. Right? These are thus 3 different methods that are used by the management to create an organizational structure. I'll just try and explain the difference. It's very simple. The one that you see, the one shown in the diagram, that has been designed by function. And an organizational structure which is based on functions, that organizational structure is the one in which lines are drawn, or compartments are created, departments are made, lines are drawn. Those boundaries that you see, they are created on the basis of various functions that are being performed in that organization. What are the functions? Marketing function, HR function, production function, finance function, R&D function. These are functions. So when the division takes place in the organizational structure, on the basis of various functions that are being performed, we usually say that this organizational structure has been designed by function. It is just, like I said, a way of designing an organizational structure. So, you know, functions or departments, you can say. The marketing department It has its own manager, own director, own assistant manager, own staff. So this department deals with marketing only. This compartment deals with finance only. So when the division takes place, in terms of the functions that are being performed, marketing, HR, finance, and they have their own appointment holders, managers, assistant managers, that is by function. Then in some cases, for example, in Nestle, the one they follow, it is this, that's an organizational structure by product. By product simply means that, you know, each product is handled independently. So, for instance, I just quoted the example of Nestle. Nestle Water, they have the entire staff, it is designated, their job is to take care of Nestle Water. Nestle Water has its own manager, own assistant manager, own management associate. So this division takes care of the chocolates or Kit Kat. This division takes care of baby food, Cerelac, so on and so on. So when the division takes place in terms of the various products that are being manufactured, we would simply say this organizational structure is by product. And you'll be surprised, actually, in companies like Nestle, when somebody presents his business card, this is what the designation says. Assistant manager, Kit Kat. Manager, Milk Pack. Manager, water, so on and so forth. Cerelac, baby food. So the division is on the basis of the products that they're dealing in. And every product operates independently, and you know, the people who are responsible for taking care of that product only. And the third category is by region. And as the name suggests, by region means that you have divided the organization into various compartments on the basis of the regions or the areas that they cover. That, you know, this division takes care of Lahore. Lahore has its own manager, own assistant manager, own staff. This area represents Karachi, Islamabad, Asia, right? And the division could take place in terms of any kind of regional characteristics. So when an organizational structure is divided into various categories on the basis of regions or areas where it's operating, we will call it by region. So there are just three ways of creating an organizational structure. It can be based on product, function, or region, right? And then one last thing, people who are just joining in, we are reaching the end of the topic organizational structure, which is obviously a part of section 2. So the last point to be covered in this particular topic is that, you know, we've been discussing levels of hierarchy, management, span of control, matrix structure, hierarchical structure, so on and so forth, layers of management. So also try to remember that there are three types of managers. Because in this organizational structure, in this chart, you can see, and we've been discussing also, there are various management positions that exist in an organization, managerial positions. So remember, there are three types of managers. In a typical organization, there are three types of managers, namely line managers, staff managers, functional managers. Line, staff, and functional manager. Three types of managers: line, staff, and functional. Okay. The difference is, a line manager is someone, he's a manager whose authority is restricted. His authority is confined, his authority is restricted to the boundaries of his own department only. I repeat, line manager is the one whose authority is restricted or confined to the boundaries of his own department only, which basically means that he is not allowed to go across the lines and influence people in other departments. That's how a line manager works. That his authority is confined, his authority is restricted to the boundaries of his own department only. Such a manager is called a line manager. His authority is confined, it is restricted to the boundaries of his own department only. And he is not allowed to go across the lines. And he's not allowed to influence people or pressurize people in other departments. That's a line manager. So what I'm trying to say is that let's suppose a marketing manager will be termed as a line manager if he's allowed to exercise authority over people in the marketing department only. So marketing manager can exercise authority over the assistant manager marketing. He cannot go across the lines, and he cannot try to dictate his terms to assistant manager finance, for example. He can't say to him, that you are an assistant manager and I'm a manager and I can influence you or I can dictate my terms. No. He is an assistant manager. He is a manager, but he's assistant manager finance. Only the finance manager has the authority to influence him. So a line manager is the one who works within the boundaries of his own department. And he's not authorized to go, like I said, across the lines and exercise authority of people in other departments. That's number one. Then we have staff managers. We have line managers, and then we have staff managers. A staff manager is the one who has the authority to go across the lines and influence people in other departments. He has that authority, a staff manager. He can go across the lines and he can influence people in other departments. A staff manager, he can act like a consultant. Staff managers, usually, they act like consultants. They are specialists. A staff manager could be anyone who has an expertise, who specializes in something. He could be, somebody who's experienced in that particular field, in that particular technology. He might be an economist. He might be, somebody who specializes in production, or he's an expert. He has a command over a certain kind of technology. So usually a staff manager, he specializes in something and he works like a consultant, like an advisor. So he would go across the lines and he would advise people in other departments as to, how to improve the quality standards, how to reduce costs, add this feature to your product, remove this feature from their product. He can do that. But the point to remember is that a staff manager only acts in an advisory capacity. He only acts in an advisory capacity. He can't really force them to follow his instructions. He acts like a consultant, like an advisor, but his advice is not binding upon them. The advice of a staff manager is not binding upon others. It is not an order. It is just a piece of advice. Whether they act upon it or they don't, that's up to them. That's a staff manager, right? Okay. The number 3 is a functional manager. Functional manager. A functional manager is someone who has the authority, like the staff manager, to go across the lines and guide people in other departments. A functional manager can also do that. He can go across the lines and he can guide people in other departments, a functional manager. But the difference between a functional and a staff manager is that a staff manager's advice, like I just explained, it is not binding upon others. But the advice of a functional manager is more of an order. His advice is binding upon others. All right. So the functional manager in that way is the most authoritative. He can go across the lines. He can guide people in other departments. I'll just quote an example. You see, for instance, R&D managers, research and development managers, they're known for acting like functional managers and even staff managers also sometimes. So the R&D person, the R&D manager, he will advise people in the production department as to this is how you can improve the quality standards. He's done some, he's carried out some experiments And he can go across the lines and he can guide people in the production department. This is the feature that should be added to your product. This is you should do, what you should do. This is something that you should refrain from. This is how you can control costs. This is how you can increase the shelf life of the product. So R&D managers, they often act like functional managers for the production department, even sometimes a staff manager also. So the difference between a functional and staff manager is that the advice of a staff manager is not binding upon others. Whereas what a functional manager asks somebody to do in another department, more than an advice, that's an order. His advice is binding upon others. So that is the basic difference between a functional and a staff manager. Right? Hopefully you understand. So people who are joining in, we just managed to wind up organizational structure, a topic in people and organizations in section 2, organizational structures. We refer to the organizational chart and learned about the term span of control, levels of hierarchy, matrix structure, hierarchical structure, and we were just going through the types of managers. So we are done with this. Now something very, very important. You know, this is the last topic in section 2. And happens to be the most important one also. Right? I want all of you to concentrate, and you need to focus here. The topic is human resource management, HRM, also called personnel management. Human resource management or personnel management, PERSONNEL, personnel management or human resource management. Okay. What you need to learn here is, usually in every section, there is one such topic, or you can say one such question based on that section, which demands that the entire section has to be summarized into one answer. For instance, in the previous section in business and environment, there's a question very commonly asked, role of government. So whenever there's a question on role of government, there are 4 or 5 topics in section 1 which have to be combined into one answer: monetary policy, fiscal policy, consumer protection, labor laws, international trade. Similarly, in the next section that we'll start discussing today after this HRM, in marketing, there's another question, marketing mix. Many of you might be familiar. Again, marketing mix is such a question or such a topic in section 3, which demands that you need to have a firm grip over the entire marketing section. In a way, the entire marketing section, section 3, is summarized into one answer. Same is the case with HRM, which we're about to discuss. Human resource management, also called personnel management. In order to attempt this question properly, and this is a very commonly asked question, in a way, the entire section 2 has to be summarized into one answer. And interestingly enough, you already know what to discuss. I'll just highlight all the topics that are included here. We have discussed all those topics separately in the last few weeks. But what you need to do is that you have to learn something about the format of the answer, which topic should be included, and how do we attempt this question, HRM, which is quite popular with the paper setters, with the examiners. So the topic is, this is the last topic in section 2, it's called HRM, human resource management or personnel management. The definition of HRM is that it is a management function that enhances staff performance. A management function that enhances staff performance. A management function that enhances staff performance. That's the definition of HRM. Okay. Just try to remember that if you're discussing a question on HRM and they want you to discuss the functions performed by an HR manager, just keep in mind the answer will revolve around 6 functions. An HR manager performs the functions of recruitment, training, motivation, discipline, communication, and development of an organizational structure that we just discussed. I repeat, HRM revolves around these 6 activities, or an HR manager performs these 6 functions: recruitment, training, motivation, discipline, communication, and development of an organizational structure. So whenever you're attempting a question on HRM, discuss the function performed by an HR manager or by a personnel manager, your answer will revolve around these 6 points. Or you can say the answer will be divided into 6 paragraphs. The first function is recruitment. And you already know recruitment is a separate independent topic. We discuss recruitment separately as a topic. Internal recruitment, external recruitment, methods of recruitment, headhunting, commercial employment agencies. Right? We discussed that indeed. You can find an independent question on recruitment. But in this question, recruitment is 1/6 of the answer. So you will have to summarize that recruitment, the topic, so that it becomes more manageable here. So, you know, one paragraph could include that an HR manager is responsible for designing, for formulating a suitable recruitment policy. So he will use a combination of internal and external recruitment to hire people. No need to discuss the entire topic. This is what I'm saying. So he can hire people internally also by promoting them. And he can use techniques such as headhunting if he has to find specialists, or he can rely on educational institutions, you know, for hiring people, for hiring candidates with the relevant skills. So just a summary of recruitment in one paragraph, depending on your writing speed, depending on, usually if it carries 40 marks, if it carries 20 marks, you have about 40 minutes for this, 40 minutes for a 20-mark question. So you will summarize recruitment into one, you know, into one paragraph. Recruitment is 1/6 of the answer. The job of an HR manager is to recruit, to hire the right person for the right job. And for this purpose, he can rely on internal recruitment, external recruitment, describe various techniques, and highlight the significance also that if he uses internal recruitment, he will motivate people because they are being promoted. If he uses external recruitment, he will have a greater choice, and these people might be more experienced, so on and so forth. So 1/6 of the discussion is recruitment. The second paragraph, the second part is training. Again, training is a separate topic. On the job training, off the job training, we all have an idea. On the job and off the job training, right? So you will discuss that the HR manager or the HR department is responsible for training the workers also. He has to provide them with training services. In this context, he can rely on the job training, off the job training. You can quote examples on the job, which is carried out at the workplace. For example, he can use techniques such as pairing or job redesigning. On the job training, right? Rotation enlargement, etc. Off the job training can also be discussed here. Off the job training, he can even send people away from the workplace to workshops, to seminars, to learn new skills. And if he trains his workers properly, they will contribute towards the productivity of the company. It is good for the workers themselves also. Wastage will be reduced, so on and so forth. So discuss the importance of training and discuss the role of the HR manager. Then the third topic to be included is motivation. And now there is so much that you can discuss in motivation, right? But you know, there's a very commonly made mistake. Try not to repeat this. Do not try to discuss all 7 theories here. That will be a blunder. You see, if you come across a question which is purely based on motivation, then you can easily discuss those 7 theories. Vroom and McClellan and Maslow and Herzberg. But in this question, motivation again is 1/6 of the answer. One paragraph summarize whatever you know into one paragraph. So, something to the effect that the HR manager is responsible for motivating the workers, for raising their motivation level. In this regard, he can offer financial rewards as well as non-financial rewards. Quote examples, financial rewards. You can refer to motivational theorists. To authenticate the answer, refer to them. But don't try to discuss the entire theory here. Refer to Taylor, for instance, when you're discussing financial rewards. Obviously, the discussion will be incomplete if you don't refer to Taylor, the economic man, remember? So you can refer to this, they can rely on the ideas of Frederick Taylor and offer a variety of financial rewards to their workers in order to motivate them, like piece rates, like commission, like bonus, etc. Right? Then you can mention non-financial rewards, teamwork. Okay, the HR manager, he should encourage teamwork also, because teamwork is a non-financial motivator as advocated by social scientists such as Mayo, such as McClelland. You can use their names to authenticate the answer. So discuss financial rewards and non-financial, like teamwork, like fringe benefits, the democratic leadership. So one paragraph on motivation, and discuss the importance also that if you have a motivated workforce, the HR manager can ensure that the labor turnover is controlled. He can ensure that the image of the company is enhanced. He can ensure that productivity improves as a result of having a motivated workforce, right? So that's motivation. Number 4 would be communication, something that we discussed last time. That it is the job of the HR manager to use a blend of various communication techniques. Remember, we discussed those in the previous class. He can use a combination of verbal communication, written communication, electronic communication, rely on new technology, rely on electronic communication. So a blend of various communication techniques should be used. That is the job of the HR manager, right? And then also discuss the barriers to communication, that the personnel manager is also duty bound. He's also responsible for removing barriers to communication. If there are any barriers, any hurdles, any problems that he notices within the organization, he needs to, figure those out and remove those barriers. For example, if he realizes that the chain of command is long, and this is a communication barrier, he needs to take steps for shortening the chain of command. If he notices that there's somebody who is stereotyped in his approach. Remember, we discussed stereotype thinking? Stereotypical thinking. We discussed this, I think, in the previous class, that, you see, his job is to make sure that messages are transmitted smoothly without any interruption from one point within the organization to the other. So, if somebody who's stereotyped in his approach, the HR manager is supposed to do something about it. Stereotype, preconceived notions, people who are biased, we discussed this in detail last time, people who are judgmental about others. So this is also his job, to make sure that everyone is treated on merit. There's no unfair treatment at the workplace. People do not judge others, or managers, they do not assess the performance of their subordinates on the basis of irrelevant factors like their appearance or their social background or gender, etc. In fact, the only criterion that should be merit or performance, right? So that's the role of the HR manager. And any such issue which pertains to communication problems, that will be addressed by the HR manager. So communication is 1/4 of the discussion. Number 5 would be discipline. That was a separate topic, that the HR manager, the HR department, they're responsible for developing or creating a code of conduct. Disciplinary procedures have to be enforced by the HR department, right? Disciplinary procedures. They have to make sure that everyone adheres to it. Everyone abides by the rules and regulations. And the defaulters who violate these rules and regulations, they have to be penalized. They have to be punished. right? So the HR manager will decide whether, the violation, it deserves, this is a case of poor performance or misconduct or gross misconduct, and whether a written warning should be issued. Maybe the offense is so serious that the person should be dismissed. So all such discipline related issues are taken care of by the HR department. This is an extremely important position, you might have realized by now. And that is why, one of the reasons people, after they're done with their business school, or when they join a business school, specializing in HR, that is strongly recommended these days, because of the fact that the HR manager, he is like the nucleus in the organization, and he plays a focal role here. And that is why, in terms of career growth, etc., this is considered to be a good position, and it's good specialization also, HR management, human resource management. Okay, so discipline. And the last one is something that we discussed a while ago in this class, organizational structure. So the personnel manager or the personnel department, they have a vital role to play in designing the organizational structure also, right? So all the important decisions, the ones that we discussed today also in the first half, all the important decisions pertaining to how the organizational structure should be designed, whether it should be a decentralized structure, whether you should delegate powers, or it should be a centralized structure, which is autocratic, obviously, whether we need to have a matrix structure, whether the situation is such that we have to switch from a hierarchical structure to a matrix one, or any other decision regarding span of control, levels of hierarchy. All these decisions with reference to the organizational structure, the HR manager has to play an important role there. So he has a great influence, over the people also who are involved, and directly also in the development of an organizational structure, he plays an active role, the HR manager, right? So this goes on to show that the HR management is certainly one of the most important functions that are performed within an organization. And if you're attempting an essay type question on this, you're supposed to go through all these points. And of course, in the end, a concluding paragraph will be needed, in which you can just add 3 or 4 more, because concluding paragraph is brief. You can add 3 or 4 sentences that highlight the importance of HR management. Like I just explained, that HR manager plays the focal role, the role of a nucleus. He acts like a nucleus for a business organization. His job is to make sure that he interacts with the other departmental heads also, so that when an HR policy is finalized, the opinion of all the departments or the heads, it is given due weightage or due importance. Right, everyone? That's HRM. Very, very important question. You must learn how to attempt this. Okay. Now, let's move on to section 3. Whatever we were discussing, this was people and organizations. This was section 2. Now, something about section 3, and we'll select a few topics from section 3 also, which are slightly more important, from the viewpoint of the paper setters or the examination. So I shared a piece of information with your class last night. There was some data regarding price and quantity demanded, etc. And this topic, it happens to be the first topic in marketing in section 3. It is demand. The topic is called demand. And what we're going to discuss right now is elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand is what we are going to discuss here, right? So just try to keep in mind that this topic, there's going to be a numerical. I'll be using this data, and you already have that actually. So something theoretical first, a brief introduction, and then straight away we will see if you're able to. This is a very simple calculation actually. And for some reason, the examiners, they really like to include questions based on 4 different types of elasticity of demand. And we've seen these questions in paper 2 and paper 3 both. The theoretical part is found in P1 also, but there are numericals quite commonly asked based on this topic, both in paper 2 and in paper 3. So, elasticity of demand, the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price, right? I hope you guys are familiar with this. So just write down elasticity of demand. We'll do the step by step. First of all, as per curriculum, you should know how to calculate 4 different types of elasticity of demand. You should know how to define these, calculate these, and in case of one, comments are also required. I'll tell you why. I'll classify these into various steps. So the first one, just try to, again, I have shared the formulas. There's a list of formulas. I'm sure you have that with you right now. And then there's a calculation also. So if you refer to that sheet, you can easily see that there are 4 formulas there, which goes on to show that there are 4 different types of elasticity of demand that we need to have an idea about. The first one is called price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand, which is the most common also. First of all, the definition. Price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded. It is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price. It is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price, right? Price elasticity demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price. So when the price changes, when the price increases or decreases, what is the impact on quantity demanded? The responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price, right? Okay. Then there's a very simple formula which is used here for calculation purposes. And the formula is, you already have that formula on the list, the sheet of paper. Price elasticity demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Right? Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. We have basically transformed that definition into a formula. Percentage change in quantity demanded or percentage change in price. Right? Okay. So here's the calculation. I have the same figures here, the ones that I forwarded to you. So the statement is, I'll just give you the statement. This is a specimen question on PED, a specimen question on price elasticity of demand. So the question says, the quantity demanded, it's all there. The quantity demanded jumps from 62,000 units. It jumps from 62,000 units to 85,000 units, right? The quantity demand, this is a specimen question on price elasticity of demand. So the quantity demanded jumps from 62,000 units to 85,000 units because of a change in price from $19 to $16. That's the question. It jumps from 62,000 units to 85,000 units because of a decrease in price from $19 to $16, right? So the price has dropped from $19 to $16, as a result of which the quantity demanded jumps from this figure to the other one. So the question is, part A, calculate the PED, calculate the price elasticity of demand, and comment on your answers. Calculate the PED with the help of this data, and comment on your answers also. Calculate the PED, calculate the price elastic demand, and comment on your answers. Comment on your results. Right? Okay. So, though, I mean, you guys have the calculation, you have the solution there also. But I want you to understand this because as an assignment, I'll give you another question with different figures and you should give it a try. Right? So in this question, as you can see, the first step is that you have to give the formula. Remember, 1 mark is for the formula. 1 mark is guaranteed if you get your formula right. You have to develop this habit because very soon when we are on section 5, we will go through all those accounting and finance based questions in which there's a lot of calculation. 1 mark is for the formula. So we will give the formula PED is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. 1 mark for that. Then I think this is very simple mathematics. You must have done this in grade 6, or if not in grade 6, I'm sure in grade 7. How do we calculate percentage change? Anything, percentage change. In this case, you have to calculate the percentage change, quantity demanded over percentage change in price. But the formula for calculating percentage change is, I'm sure you know, that was close. Okay. Actual change divided by the original figure. Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. This is how you calculate the percentage change. Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. Right? Simple. This is how you calculate the percentage change. So in our case, what were the figures? First of all, let's calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded. You can refer to the solution also, you already have that. What is the actual change in demand? It jumps from 62,000 to 85,000, right? From 62,000, it jumps to 85,000. So what is the actual change in demand? 62,000, it jumps to 85,000. So the actual change in demand should be 23,000, right? Initially, the demand was 62. Now it jumps to 85. So 85 minus 62, you get 23,000. That's the actual change. Divided by the original figure. The original figure is 62,000, right? The original figure can't be 85. It jumps to 85. That's the new figure, right? Don't make such a mistake because this is a simple calculation, but very commonly asked, and you can easily score, and you'll be surprised. In paper 2, usually, this question carries 4 marks, 6 marks. But we've seen in paper 3, the same question carrying 10 marks also, in which different elasticity of demand, they have to be calculated. So just try to make sure that you always score full marks in this. So 62 and 85, 23. Divide with the original figure, which is 62,000 into 100. Just because you have to calculate the percentage. The same drill to be followed for price. What is the actual price? 19. The actual price was 19. It goes down to 16, right? So what is the actual change? $3. Initially, the price was 19. Now it goes down to 16. There's a difference of 3. How do you calculate the percentage change? Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. So what is the actual change in price from 19 to 16? That's 3. Right? What is the original price? The original price was 19. 3 over 19 into 100. That's it. I hope you've understood this. Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. So how do you calculate the percentage change? Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. So the actual change in price was 3. divide by the original figure. That was 19, 3 over 19. So by doing this, the final answer that you should get is 2.35. You can go through the calculations yourself also. 2.38, 2.35 actually. 2.35 is the PED. 2.35, that's your price elasticity demand. Simple. Percentage change in quantity demand or percentage change in price. How do we calculate the percentage change? I just explained. Okay. I'll go through this once more. I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. Okay. What we're trying to calculate here is the price elasticity demand. I'll just quickly go through this once more before I give you another question that you will calculate yourself. The formula is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price, right? So the data that we had, you already have the data with you. That was that the quantity demanded jumps from 62,000 to 85,000. Why? Because there has been a reduction in price from $19 to $16. So you'll give the formula percentage change in quantity demanded or percentage change in price. How do you calculate the percentage change? Actual change divided by the original figure into 100. So the actual change in demand was 23,000, right? And the original figure in case of demand, it was 62,000, right? That was 62,000. That was the original figure into 100. Divided by percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So the actual change in price was 3 because it went down from 19 to 16. 3 divided by the original price, which was 19 into 100. So if you solve these with the help of a calculator, you should get 2.35. That should be the final answer, right? Okay. Now what we're going to do is, I'm going to give you a simple question. You give it a try, and I'll give you the statement first. Then also, I would like you to know that whenever you calculate the PED, there's a certain way of coming up with a suitable comment also. We will just discuss that. Just note this down. I'll note the figures down myself also, right? So the question is, this is another specimen question, but you will give it a try yourself. So the question is, the quantity demanded changes from 125,000 units. It changes from 125,000 units to 98,000 units. Now there's a reduction in demand. In the previous question, there was an increase. In this, there's a reduction. So the quantity demanded changes from 125,000 units to 98,000 units. From 125,000 to 98,000 units, it slips the demand. It slips from 125,000 to 98,000 because of an increase in price. From $26 to $31, right? So what's happening here is that the quantity demanded of a product goes down from 125,000 to 98,000 because the price has jumped from $26 to from $26 to $31. The price jumps from $26 to $31, and because of this increase in price, the demand drops from 125,000 to 98,000. Right? So you have to calculate the PED, and you have to comment. You have to comment on your results also. I've noted this down. You will give it a try. and let's see if you can solve this. Okay, something about the comment, how to comment on your answers. You see, the rule is simple. If it exceeds 1, if the PED exceeds 1, if the answer is more than 1, you might have an idea, it is said to be elastic. If it is more than 1, it is said to be elastic. If it is less than 1, it is said to be inelastic, right? Exceeds 1, elastic. Less than 1, inelastic. And by any chance, if it is equal to 1, we call it unit elastic, right? More than 1, elastic. Less than 1, inelastic. And equal to 1, unit elastic or unitary elastic. But 2 sentences are needed. When you have to comment on the results of PED, there's a certain way that you have to phrase the sentence. I tell you how. Let's take into consideration the same answer, 2.35, right? Let's learn how to comment on this. This will be the comment. The price elastic demand is 2.35. We have just calculated that. The price elastic demand is 2.35. More than 1, right? Indicating that the demand is elastic. The PED is 2.35. Indicating that the demand is elastic because it exceeds 1. The demand is elastic. Indicating that the demand is elastic, right? Because it exceeds 1. Now the second sentence. This means that a change in price, this means, being elastic means that a change in price leads to a more than proportionate change in quantity demanded. Remember the phrase more than proportionate. PROPORTIONATE. A change in price leads to a more than proportionate change in quantity demanded. Try to remember this. So whenever the demand is elastic, you will use these terms. You will use this phrase that change in price leads to a more than proportionate change in quantity demanded. This is what the term elastic means. This is the right way to comment on. Let's suppose the answer was less than 1. Let's suppose the answer was not 2.35, it was 0.35. Let's suppose hypothetically the answer was 0.35. So that means that the demand is inelastic because it is less than 1. It's inelastic. So your comment would be different. That the answer, the PED is 0.35. That means the demand is inelastic. This means that a change in price leads to a less than proportionate change in quantity demanded. Less than proportionate change in quantity demanded. Inelastic, less than proportionate. Elastic, more than proportionate. Right? And if it is unitary elastic, if the answer is exactly 1, if it's unitary elastic, then you will write a change in price leads to a proportionate change in quantity. Proportionate means equal. A change in price leads to a proportionate change in quantity demanded. Right? Proportionate is equal. More than proportionate is more than equal. More than proportionate is more than equal. That, you know, this basically means, being elastic means that a slight change in price leads to a significant change in demand. And inelastic means a major change in price leads to a small change in demand. So technically, you know, the right way to describe that is more than proportionate, less than proportionate, or proportionate if it's exactly the same. That the price increases by 5% and the demand goes down by 5%, that's proportionate. I hope you have understood. If you have, then the remaining 3 calculations should be a piece of cake, but you just have to remember the definitions and the formulas. Let's go through the list. After price elastic demand, the next one is promotional spending elasticity demand, PSED. Just refer to that list, promotional spending elasticity demand. promotional spending elasticity of demand. So the definition is of promotional spending elasticity of demand. The definition is it is the responsiveness of quantity demanded. The responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in promotional spending. Responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in promotional spending. Right? Responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in promotional spending. Which basically means that when a business spends more or less on advertising, on promotion, what is the impact on demand? So that is promotional spending elasticity of demand, the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in promotional spending. So you can transform the definition into a formula. What is the formula? Percentage change. You can look at the formula, percentage change in promotional spending. That will be mentioned in place of price. And the remaining formula will remain unchanged. So what's the right formula? Promotional spending elastic demand is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in promotional spending. So instead of price, it's promotional spending. That PS that you see in that formula, that is promotional spending. I repeat, promotional spending elastic demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in promotional spending. And this remaining methodology is exactly the same. The way you calculate the PED, you calculate PSED in a similar fashion. And in PSED, you don't even have to comment on the results. You just have to remember the formula and the calculation. Comment is needed only for price elastic demand. Right? The number 3 is income elasticity of demand. Y denotes income, YED. Income elastic demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income. It is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income. That is income elastic demand. Responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income. So basically what they're saying is that when the income changes, what is the impact on demand? Responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income. Right? So the formula would be percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Simple. Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Right? And the last one, that's called cross elasticity of demand. Cross elasticity of demand. That's the last one. Cross elasticity of demand. And what is that cross elasticity of demand? It is the responsiveness, cross elasticity of demand. It is the responsiveness of quantity demanded. It is the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one product to a change in price of another product. Cross elastic demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one product to a change in price of another product. And this is usually applicable in case of substitutes and complementary goods. Right? This is seen in case of substitutes and complementary goods. Cross elastic demand, the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one product to a change in price of another product. And this is usually seen in case of substitutes or complementary goods. For example, like Coke and Pepsi, they're substitutes, one replaces the other. So when the price of Coke changes, what is the impact on the demand for Pepsi? When the price of Coke changes, how does it affect the demand for Pepsi? That's cross-elastic demand. Or in case of complementary goods, like CD players and CDs, etc., kite and string. When the price of kites increases, what is the impact on the demand for the string? That's cross-elastic demand, and just refer to the formula. Percentage change in quantity demanded of product A, cross-elastic demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded of product A divided by percentage change in price of product B, X and Y or A and B. I hope you've understood this, right? So the calculations are quite simple, but like I said, very commonly found, and you must score whether it carries 10 marks or 4 marks or whatever, you have to score 4 marks. Memorize these formulas. It's a simple working. Then you give the answer, you comment on the answer correctly, you will always score full marks in this. Right? Okay. So after elasticity, now the next subheading is exceptional demand. Let's learn a bit about exceptional demand. We're still discussing demand. This is section 3, and this happens to be the first topic. Exceptional demand. In order to understand the concept of exceptional demand, try to recall the law of demand. I'm sure you all remember the law of demand, even if you did not have economics. You have this, obviously you have this in business also, but this is one of the best known laws in economics, the law of demand. What are we going to discuss here? Exceptional demand. But this overlaps with the law of demand. So I'll just quickly go through what the law of demand states. As many of us have an idea, the law of demand states that as price increases, quantity demanded falls, ceteris paribus, right? The law of demand states that as the price increases, the quantity demanded falls. Ceteris paribus obviously means all of the things remaining the same under normal circumstances. So as the price increases, the quantity demanded drops. This is what the law of demand states, ceteris paribus, all of the things remaining constant. Right? The law of demand, and this is a common observation also, even if you have not done this before, when the price increases, the demand goes down because the purchasing power of people goes down. Normally, this is what happens. In most of the cases, this is what happens. Price increases, demand falls under normal circumstances. Because when the price increases, your affordability, your purchasing power is compromised, and the quantity demanded falls usually. And people who have seen the graph, the law of demand, the demand curve, it always slopes downwards. The demand curve always slopes downwards, which means when price increases, demand falls. There's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demand. Okay. We're not discussing the law of demand here. We're discussing exceptional demand. This was just the background. So we just learned that the law of demand states that price increases, demand falls. However, there are certain products that do not follow the law of demand. There are certain products that violate the law of demand. There are certain products, they negate the law of demand, they go against the law of demand. Right? So such products are said to have an exceptional demand. Such products which violate the law of demand, they're said to have an exceptional demand. Right? Products that negate the law of demand, products that go against the law of demand, they're said to have an exceptional demand. Right? Which basically means that when price increases, the quantity demanded in case of these products, it does not fall. They negate the law of demand, they go, or it does not fall significantly. This is what the concept of exceptional demand, this is what it revolves around. That there are certain products, they do not follow the law of demand, they're said to have an exceptional demand. So try to remember there are 3 categories of such products that have an exceptional demand. There are 3 categories of such products that have an exceptional demand. The first one is called necessities. Necessities, they have an exceptional demand. Right? Necessities, they have an exceptional demand. So necessities, products which are very high in demand, products which are consumed by almost everyone. They're equally popular with everyone, like staple food. there's certain food items, we call those staple food, and other necessities that are consumed by everyone. For example, in Pakistan, wheat is our staple food. The person who represents the lowest income group in Pakistan, even he consumes wheat. He needs to consume some roti, obviously. Even if he represents the lowest income group, he will cut down his expenses in some other area, but he will not let this be compromised for himself and his family also. So that is why we say necessities have an exceptional demand. Necessities, they have an exceptional demand. They do not follow the law of demand, which means even if the price increases, we do not see a downward trend in demand. Even if the price increases, we don't see a decrease, a downward trend in demand, because it's a necessity. This is something that cannot be compromised. So necessities, like staple food items, we have wheat, there's certain countries they have rice, in certain countries like Bangladesh, they have fish and rice. Then corn is also staple food. So these commodities, they have an exceptional demand. That's number one. The second such category, of products that have an exceptional demand, we call those luxury items. Luxuries. Luxuries also have an exceptional demand. Luxury items, as you know, which are purchased and consumed by the niche market, NICHE, niche market. Luxury items are the ones which are purchased by the highest income group, the niche market. They also have an exceptional demand. And the reason is that these products, the luxury items, the branded goods, expensive watches, cars, jewelry, etc., they are purchased by the highest income group, and their mindset is such that the high price does not discourage them. The high price does not have a disincentive effect. It doesn't discourage them. In case of a niche market, in case of luxury items, high prices do not discourage the customers. They do not have a disincentive effect. Disincentive is discouraging effect. So we can safely say the luxury items of this niche market, they also have an exceptional demand. When the price increases in case of such items, when the price increases, we don't see a downward trend in demand, because the people who are buying these goods, they are the ones who want to be, part of an exclusive class of people, and they can afford to buy these products. They're quality conscious customers. They're not price conscious customers. They're quality conscious. They're not price conscious, right? So the high price does not have a negative impact on demand. In fact, you'll be surprised sometimes. The data proves this, that in case of certain luxury items, it is known for Rolls-Royce, for instance, that when the price increases, we don't see a decrease in demand, that's right. But on the contrary, the demand begins to rise. In case of certain luxury items, it has been observed, when the price rises, not only that, the demand doesn't fall, the demand also begins to rise. The price rises, the demand rises. Because now the high price makes the product even more exclusive. The high price makes the product even more appealing to this high income group. So even if it remained constant, we would have categorized it as exceptional demand. But in many cases, we've seen in case of luxury items that as the price increases, demand also begins to rise. So necessities, luxuries, they're categorized as products with an exceptional demand. The third category is investments. Remember, investments also have an exceptional demand. Investments also have an exceptional demand. But you should know how to define the term investment. An investment is, definitions are important. An investment is an amount spent in anticipation of a return in future. How do we define the term investment? This is an amount spent in anticipation of a return in future. So the amount spent today, it will yield a return in the future. So the amount spent in anticipation of a return in future, that's what an investment is. The amount spent in anticipation of a return in future. So most of the investments, they have an exceptional demand. I'll quote an example, shares. Shares. People who have an idea about how the stock exchange works, when the share prices rise, the demand also begins to rise. When the share prices rise, people want to buy more. The demand for that share also increases. You know, for example, if the share price yesterday was 10 rupees and today it is 12, the investors might think that there's an upward trend in prices. Yesterday it was 10, today it's 12, tomorrow it might be 14. So they will buy more. They expect the trend to continue in the future also. In case of investments like shares, like property, when there's an upward trend in prices, people expect the trend to continue in the future also, and they buy more. So the price is rising and the demand is rising. That is exceptional demand. When the price rises, the demand doesn't fall. So that is why investments are also categorized, you know, as exceptional demand. So all those products that are purchased with the purpose of, you know, making an investment like shares, property, etc., sometimes precious metals, when the prices show an upward trend, there are many investors who buy more because they expect the trend to continue in the future also. By the way, you know, it is always advisable that you use technical terms. And I mentioned this before also, you're supposed to show off your knowledge, display your knowledge. You have to impress the examiner. So just try to remember that when there is an upward trend in prices, in share prices, that is called a bullish trend, B-U-L-L-I-S-H. Bullish trend, bulls and bears. When the share prices rise, we call it a bullish trend. Bullish, B-U-L-L-I-S-H. So when there's a bullish trend in the stock market, the demand for shares increases. And when the share prices are dropping, we call it a bearish trend. Bulls and bears, B-E-A-R-I-S-H. Bearish trend. So when there's a bearish trend in share prices, when the share prices are dropping, the demand decreases. Because people expect the trend to continue in the future, that yesterday it was 10, today it is 8, tomorrow it might go down further. So I should not take that risk. So bearish trend, share prices are dropping, bullish trend, share prices are rising. So in investments, we have seen when there's a bullish trend, when the prices are rising, the demand also begins to increase. So we can safely categorize it or label it as a product having an exceptional demand. Hopefully you've understood this exceptional demand, and hopefully you can calculate the elasticity demand also. You must go through those formulas, memorize those, and try attempting that question also, the one that I gave. See if you're able to calculate this properly and try to comment on your results also. So just, you know, something about the topics that we are going to cover in this section, the one that we started going through today. The section is called marketing, section 3. We've discussed elasticity demand here and exceptional demand. Other topics which should be given more importance here, and we must go through these topics in section 3. Some of the topics might be new to you, some you might have done before, but we must go through all these topics. We'll be discussing market segmentation, demographic, geographic, etc. Market segmentation is very important. Product life cycle is very important. Introduction, growth, maturity, decline, extension strategies. Then, of course, market research is important in this particular section. So we have elasticity demand, market research, product life cycle, market segmentation. Forecasting is important in section 3. Time series analysis that we learn with the help of that schedule. Time series, we will learn how to attempt that. Time series analysis, forecasting. And then, of course, the last topic that we'll discuss in section 3 is going to be the marketing mix, in which we will go through both the 4 Ps and the 4 Cs. 4 Ps and 4 Cs, both. That's the marketing mix. More or less, these are topics that we're going to cover as far as section 3 is concerned. So I think this should be good enough for today. Just make sure you keep revising all this, and we'll continue with the discussion whenever we have our next class. All right, everyone. This is it. Allah Hafiz.